Hey everybody, there's a story about driving from Manchester, New Hampshire to Lake Tahoe, Nevada in 1991 at the age of 18, almost 19. Just so you know, my name is Dave, I'm 53, and I like to tell stories about my life, maybe give advice to people that want to comment or whatever. This is my first video, and just see where it goes. 1991, I had a S-10, an old S-10 pickup truck. I packed my motorcycle in the back, some clothes, and it's basically everything I had. I graduated high school a year before. I was working as a mechanic at Sears and Roebuck's. They're not around anymore, but Sears and Roebuck's garage, doing tires, oil changes, front end work, brakes, stuff like that. And I had a friend who was in Lake Tahoe. I said, let's go. And I left with $350 and packed up the S-10 and headed to the other side of the country. It was, I did it in a little over 3 days. I slept 4 hours in between each night or whatever. A lot of Jolt and No-Doz. Not a good combo. But hey, at 18, almost 19, that was the way to go. I headed out and I hit, obviously, Vermont, then over into New York. I thought I was killing it. I thought for sure I'd be in Tahoe within the next day because I was just killing states. I was through New Hampshire, through Vermont, through New York, and then I hit Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania, put it into perspective. I cruised through Pennsylvania, and it took me, like I said, a little over 3 days. When I hit Wyoming, the wind was so strong on Route 80 in Wyoming, it like slowed my truck down to 45 miles an hour. And at that time, the air pump is part of the emissions in the truck, and they go into the each line goes into the manifold, and a couple of those lines, the intake manifold, they started leaking, so I started getting that ticking noise, tick, tick, tick. And I didn't think I was gonna get out of Wyoming. It was so windy, it was unbelievable. But I managed through and eventually ended up in Reno and came up over if you've ever been to Reno, up into Tahoe, I came up over the hill. I didn't know if I was gonna make it up that hill to get into Incline Village, but I did. I got into Incline and came down into Incline, and there's a roundabout. I took the roundabout, went left, and there's a gas station there on the left-hand side, and I pulled in there with $25 left in my pocket, and I asked the guy, hey man, are you looking for help? And he was. I literally started pumping gas right there and then. I was like, praise Jesus, I needed this job because I'm down to $25. So I worked an 8-hour shift and then went and met up with my friend who's living there, and I shared a room with him. We were there for about 4 months, maybe five or 6 months. And he was working at a marina on the California side, and I was working at the gas station. I was detailing cars. It was the first time I drove like a Lamborghini. Some of the cars that we detailed in Tahoe were just like insane. So nice. I learned that's the first place I ever wakeboarded was Lake Tahoe. Lake Tahoe is like one of my favorite places on the planet. It's gorgeous. The Sierra Nevadas, the Bonanza, like the whole thing was just amazing. So we were there about 6 months, and then we headed to Oregon, Mount Hood, and we ended up in a town called Rhododendron. And I got a job at the hotel at Mount Hood. If you've ever been there, I guess they filmed The Shining as you drive up. I don't think they actually filmed the hotel there, but as you drive up to it, that part of the film they did there. And I was a chambermaid. I cleaned the rooms and stuff like that. I was living in my S-10. I was sleeping in the back, and this was like November, December. I woke up a couple nights and the snow was just like blowing over the top of the bed of my truck. I had a plastic tarp over the bed of the truck. But I would take showers in the rooms that we were cleaning. And like me and the other people that were working, we would watch out for one another, and we'd take showers in the rooms that we were cleaning. We'd take a shower and then clean them as we were coming out of them. Big snowboard, ski kind of thing, but in the summer at Mount Hood, in case you don't know, they do a lot of snowboard camps because it's glacier. It's basically a glacier, and it's actually a really cool place. Government camp is like pretty neat. So that whole part of Oregon is just gorgeous. Like, I can't wait to go back. But I was there for probably 5 or 6 months. We ended up renting a room from a couple that had just had a baby, and I worked with her as a chambermaid, and she rented a room to me and my buddy so we could stay there. And then he ended up going back to New Hampshire, and I went up to Seattle and up in Washington, and ended up in a place called Longview, Washington. And it was a paper mill. I was only there for a month, 2 months, because it's a paper mill and the whole place just stinks. It just smells like, it's too bad, too nice place, but just smells like rotten eggs. Just not good. So I was only there a couple months, and then I took a job through the mail. I got a job at Vail Resorts in Colorado, and packed up the S-10, headed out to Colorado. I came up over Route 70 into Vail, snowing like crazy, rear-wheel drive truck, summer tires, just dumping snow. Barely could make it to Vail. We pulled into Vail. I went into a convenience store, gas station kind of thing, and it was like 3 a.m. And the kid working behind, it was like a snowboard kid working behind the counter, and I said, "Hey man, are there apartments or anything like that? I got a job at the mountain being a lifty, and are there any apartments and stuff?" And he was like, "No man, there's nothing." He's like, "If you don't have employee housing, then there's nothing." I was like, "Ugh." And he goes, "You're better off keep going and head towards Boulder. You may have a better chance at finding a job or something like that." So off I went, kept going, went through Loveland Pass and down Route 70 into Golden and all that stuff, and went over to Boulder, and ended up in Boulder again, pulled into a Circle K. And I got a job at that convenience store. It's a spot they used to call the Hill. They still do call it the Hill. CU campus is right there. And I got a job at night right there at the Hill at that Circle K. I worked that night, and then I got a room at the youth hostel about a half a mile from there. And I would walk to work there, and I ended up getting a job. They're not around anymore, but at Montgomery Ward's, they had a garage, and I was slinging tires, oil changes, front end stuff like I was doing at Sears. And I worked those 2 jobs for a while. I lived at the youth hostel. It was $60 a week, and I just crashed there. I ended up meeting my buddy Tim and his buddy Aaron, but Tim and I worked at the Circle K, became good friends. And we ended up renting a 16-foot box truck, and through the mail again, because again, you didn't have the internet and cell phones and stuff. I got us a job at Lake Powell in Arizona/Utah, out in the island. They have a gas station out in the middle of Lake Powell where you can, for your boats and stuff. So I got us a job there, but it didn't start for about 6 to 8 weeks. So we put everything into the Ryder truck, the box truck. I ended up selling my S-10, but I still had my motorcycle. It was a 68 BSA Lightning, chopped out little peanut tank. Loved that thing. I didn't want to get rid of it. Threw that in the truck. Off we went. We pulled in to Lake Powell, and maybe, you know, obviously some of you out there are going to know what I'm talking about, but Lonesome Rock, it's right at the Utah-Arizona line. We backed the Ryder truck right up. When we were there, the water was right at ground level. I have since been there with my wife and kids, and then again with a buddy of mine, and it was like 4 feet down from there. And then when I went with my buddy on a guy trip, you could literally walk to Lonesome Rock. So that was crazy. But we stayed there for about 6 weeks. We had hammocks in the back of the truck. We met some girls that had the old school jet skis that you could ride. We rode around there and lived off the money that we had. That was like some of the funnest times of my life, playing America on our boombox and just like chilling. It was pretty amazing. But then we started running out of money, so we had to return the box truck. So we went to Phoenix, returned the box truck, and I drove the BSA, and Aaron had a old GTI and followed me, and we went to Sedona, Arizona to try and find work. If you've ever been to Sedona, like the drive into Sedona was amazing, especially on an old rigid framed BSA. That was a lot of fun. And couldn't find work. There wasn't a lot of places to live or a lot of work. So we were told about a place, Lake Havasu, where the London Bridge is. So we went to Lake Havasu. Went to Lake Havasu, stayed at a campground for a week. I ended up finding a job at this place called Big Jim's. And I started slinging tires again, doing oil changes and stuff like that, and trying to save up money to get an apartment. And then Tim and Aaron went back to New Hampshire because they couldn't really find a job or something else out of back home. They hung out there and until they had to leave, and they left. And yeah, I ended up getting a job at Big Jim's, saved up enough money to get an apartment. And I was there for about, again, maybe like another 6 months, 8 months. I found an old 64 Chevy pickup truck that needed a motor and transmission. I bought the truck and replaced the motor, put a 455 Buick motor in it with a 400 turbo transmission and new set of tires. I did the brakes all over and saved up about $550 to drive that from Lake Havasu back to Campton, New Hampshire, where I had gotten a job at Waterville Valley ski resort. Saved the $550. Said c'est la vie to Arizona. Loved Arizona. Driving out of Arizona, I was probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours into the drive, and my truck just went dead. And the state troopers came along, and they called for a tow truck. Tow truck came along, this older guy, and hooked me up, and off we went. I hopped in the truck with him, and we're driving along, and my plates, they said New Hampshire, because I had my uncle back home register the truck for me. And he goes, so, you heading to New Hampshire, huh? I go, yeah. And he goes, huh? He goes, yeah, I'm from Dover. I was like, what? And he goes, yeah. And I go, no way, you kidding me? So I started talking to him about New Hampshire. He drove me probably like an hour to his house. And him and I spent another hour and a half testing coils. It was the coil that went in my truck. And we found a good coil, put it in the truck, thing fired up. It was great. And sent me on my way. He was like, don't worry about it. I was like, seriously? I don't have to pay you for anything? And he's like, just make it home, man. I was like, what? So that's a pretty great story. And then around Arkansas, the transmission started to howl. So I was like, man, I may end up in Arkansas. I filled it up with gas in Arkansas, and she was a little low on tranny fluid, but topped her off. She made it to New Hampshire. I had to change the torque converter and stuff once I made it to New Hampshire, but I pulled into my grandparents' place with $50 and a job at Waterville Valley. It was the beginning of winter. And yeah, that was my adventure for 3 years, coming back 21. And it was a great experience. So I guess basically the moral of the story is, like, anybody out there that's young and they don't know exactly what they want to do, go out and see the country. I'm not saying go see the world, go see the country that you live in, because it's a great country. There's tons of stuff to see, and the experiences I picked up along the way, the people that I met, it was just, I don't regret it. I don't regret it whatsoever. People told me to go to college and stuff like that. It just wasn't in my cards. So seeing the country, having to work to get from place to place, it was just a great experience. And yeah, so I just wanted to share it. And the next video I'll do once I got home. I ended up working for my uncle and got my truck driver's license, and I was 22 and built a house. Yeah, that's the next video. So hope you guys like the story. I don't know how this YouTube thing works, but it seems like it'll be fun. So I guess you're supposed to say subscribe, give me a thumbs up, all that fun stuff. So we'll make another video soon, and thanks a lot.